His favorite subject was himself. In fact, he was known to paint over 90 portraits of himself. Hi, this is Anita from 5 Minutes with Art. Today I want to give some interesting facts about Rembrandt. And if you're interested, in my blog, Anita Louise Art, I have written out 20 interesting facts about Rembrandt. And today I want to highlight some of the most interesting ones. The first one is, of course, that he was known by just one name, as Rembrandt. He lived in 17th century Holland. His favorite subject was himself. In fact, he was known to paint over 90 portraits of himself. He started at the University of Leiden at age 14, but he didn't really ever finish anything. And he was one of the artists during this time that didn't go to Italy. In fact, he stayed in Holland to study art. He made himself a name during his time as a painter of history. He married an art dealer's younger cousin, and his wife had quite a bit more money than he did, and her name was Saskia, and they seemed to have been happily married, and they had 4 children, and 3 of them died. And after their son was born, and he was 1 year old, then she died. But she made a will that left Rembrandt and her son Titus her fortune, but stipulated that Rembrandt's share would be lost if he married again. So this made for him to have a really complicated personal life. He was basically a widower, and he had this young child. So he brought in this woman who was also a widower, and she became his common law wife for a short time. But then he brought in another servant, and he fell in love with this servant. And then the widower that he promised to be the Commonwealth wife basically took him to court, and it became this court case. And then he basically said that she stole the jewelry, and she ended up in prison. And so it's really quite this sort of juicy tale about Rembrandt and his messy, messy home life that he had. You can read more about it in my blog. I'll leave a link below. He became one of the most famous artists in Europe, but he was also known to squander money. He was not very good with money, and he loved to buy antiques and artifacts. In fact, he was declared bankrupt in his life. And because he was declared bankrupt, he had to move from his house, move to a smaller place. And his son, later in his life, Titus, was left to look after him. And he even sold his first wife's tomb, and because he didn't have any money. And then he continued to squander money on artifacts and art. So it seems like he was this compulsive buyer of artifacts and art. And he said a lot of them he needed for his art to be able to paint the things of history and things. Most of his self-portraits he painted in the last 20 years of life. There's many people who think that he could have suffered from what's called stereo blindness, which means he was able to see in 3D. He was known to secretly embed some codes, some different codes in his work. He, taught many other students. So, some of his paintings, some people say could have been other people's paintings, but we, really don't know. Most of them seem to have been his paintings. One of the things that I love about Rembrandt is not only was he a great artist, but he also seems to be this really great character that has this fascinating history about him. If you'd like to be able to learn more and read more, I recommend that you read this blog about these 20 different interesting facts about him, because he really is a fascinating person. This is Anita from 5 Minutes with Art. We hope you've enjoyed spending 5 minutes with us and learning a little bit about art, and in particular about this, fascinating artist, this great artist of Rembrandt. We'd like to thank Rico, who helps put our podcast together each week. And we'd like to thank each of you for listening, because we know without you, these 5 minutes of learning something about a great artist could not happen. Thank you so much.